So we had one of our followers reach out to us explaining that they were in a situation where somebody slapped on a rear naked choke on them. And so they asked us what are a few things that they could have done to help prevent this type of situation. So here you go. So there's gonna be a lot of factors anytime somebody gets their arms around your neck. First and foremost, doesn't matter what position you're in, doesn't matter if we're standing on the ground, anytime somebody gets their hands around your neck, the first thing that you have to do is start hand fighting and getting hands on. And honestly, the faster you're able to react, the faster I'm able to start pulling this down, the better chance that you actually have to literally pull this arm free, and then we can start working out of there. Obviously, the longer that we wait and the more that this sinks in, the more difficult it's gonna be. Yes, anyone that even talks about like being able to stick your fingers in or being able to reach back and pull fingers, you've never trained chokes with somebody that really locks in, because this is all gonna be extremely difficult. And if this person gets a good grip and starts really squeezing, even if I do manage to get a finger on here, you're not gonna be awake long enough to really be able to utilize that. So again, take all that stuff out of your mind. We're gonna give you a few options. It's just gonna simply depend on two things. One, your experience. The more that you're experienced, the more that you've trained, obviously you're gonna be able to pull off some of these moves a little bit easier, or be able to do some of the ones just in general, right? The other thing it's gonna depend on is how this person's hitting a rear naked choke. Now we're just gonna kind of go with the idea that they're literally just grabbing you around the neck and they're just kind of like pulling you back like this. They're not doing like the rear arm triangle or anything like that, right? Just literally just locking on, pulling you straight back at this point. So you messed up, we couldn't get on right away. We're maybe able to get like a somewhat partial grip. So again, whatever grip that you have, get a nice tight bite on it, take your elbows, tuck them nice and tight to your side. I don't want my arms out here. I wanna pull everything down. I also wanna kind of bring my chin down with it. Now, also understand, even if I tuck my chin and they have their arm across the front, one, I can still get choked out on the side a little bit, but two, they're gonna rip your jaw off at this point. So don't assume that because I tuck my chin, I'm invincible to chokes either. Best bet though is when I do get any sort of hand motion or hand grips on it, tucking the chin does help kind of just secure this in place. Now, because especially like this time of year, it's a little bit colder, people are gonna be wearing hoodies and jackets. If for whatever reason this is tight enough and I can't get any fingertips in here, I can start kind of grabbing the jacket or grabbing higher up on the sleeve a little bit. And the more that I can pull this down, I might be able to actually get their elbow to turn a little bit, which in turn allows me to kind of start getting a little bit of air, but more importantly, it also opens up a little gap where now I can start kind of working my hands in and hopefully get a little bit more bite and a little bit more pull on that. As we're doing all this, I want to look to get heavy. Again, it's going to depend on what this person's doing, but if they're not really doing anything and they're just squeezing, like the heavier that I can get, it's going to be more difficult for this person to be able to move me, pull me back, pick me up, whatever the case is. So I always want to make sure that I get a good solid base, as again, I'm constantly hand fighting. Don't worry so much about trying to do anything back here, none of these eye jabs or anything. Our first and only priority is just locking down this arm as tight as we possibly can. Now, if he's not really moving and he's just in place, getting a good squeeze on you, then what I want to do is take my opposite leg and I'm looking to step behind their near side leg. So instead of stepping back like this, I'm gonna take my inside leg and step all the way around and get nice and tight. Now, essentially what I'm doing here is putting myself into a front headlock position. So yes, he can easily start changing up. He can grab on the side. He might shift his hips like that. If this was kind of more like a street fight situation, not necessarily like a sexual violent attack or anything, they may let go and start punching you with one hand and start working strikes. Either way, the point is once I get on here and I step back, I immediately, because now I'm in a position where I'm not necessarily being choked, I have to start working from here. Again, I want to start working towards the upper hand. So as I have a good base, if I'm able to maintain this grip, I might be able to take this hand and work around and get a good grip on the far back, which we'll touch about here in a second. First, I want you to understand that you can just start applying strikes. If I have the near side hand, I might be able to kind of get some groin strikes up in the middle, literally just kind of punching as tight as I can to the groin. I might be able to kind of shoot this arm through a little bit and start working elbows back here. If not, then I'm gonna do my best to try and just do some damage here. I might be able to start kind of just punching a little bit on the outside of the leg. Now, you may say that this isn't gonna make a difference. If you've ever had a Charlie horse, you might think differently. And again, a couple of these strikes enough might just get them to kind of pivot or potentially even start kind of squaring up a little bit more. That will then allow me to work into other strikes. But either way, the more damage of anything that I can do, the time that I'm doing, or the same time that I'm doing all this, I also want to continue pulling this arm free while also trying to posture my head up. Again, now I'm trying to separate the choke from my actual, the choking arm from my neck, separate all that so that again I can start working free. I might be able to kind of like pass out and come up in the back a little bit, and now I can start kind of working strikes from there. Again, that's just going to kind of depend on your experience. More importantly though, is if we get this grip back here and I'm able to kind of hold on here, so go ahead and lock your hands again, we do have a couple options for takedowns from here. One thing that I can do is when I do get back here, if he's got a jack or anything, I can grab nice and tight and just pull. If not, maybe they're wearing a belt, grab the waistline, pull that. Otherwise, just grab the hip bone. Either way, I'm looking to just pull that hip nice and tight towards me so that I can get their weight tight. I'm going to take the same side leg and I'm literally just going to sit through and we're going straight down to the ground. And I'm going to end up right back on top. Now you might wonder, why are we going down to the ground in this position? Well, from here, he's not really in the position to choke me. I'm also on top. He can continue squeezing. Go ahead, squeeze, right? This might suck. It's gonna be uncomfortable, but at least from here, I'm in a good spot that I can get on top. And now, go ahead, keep your hands tight, right? Now I can sit here and just start slamming hammer fists, come up, start dropping elbows, and I can do the damage that I need to do, which ultimately will allow me to go. So it's okay if I'm going to the ground if it's on my terms. The other way that you can do a takedown from here is when I get my hand around on the hip, I can take that front hand and just literally hook the inside of the knee here. Again, this is gonna obviously depend on size and your experience, but I can literally just pull, lift, and just slam them as hard as I can down to the ground, throw in whatever strikes I need to do, and we get the hell out of there. The other option that may arise depends on if they start actually like dragging you back with this, right? Because if he's dragging me back, it's gonna be very difficult for me to try and actually step all the way behind like this. However, when he's dragging me back, what I can do is take my outside leg and step nice and deep. And all I'm looking to do is trap this leg behind his leg, yeah, as you see fit, like right behind his ankle. And at this point, all I'm gonna do now, keep the grip, I'm gonna turn away from him, and I'm literally just going to bow and bring him straight down to the ground from there. Now again, this is one of those techniques that seems too simple, too easy to be true. Again, depends on just the mechanics. If we set everything up right, sizing it a little bit, and obviously you need to be able to rep this out so that you can actually time this out properly. But as they're pulling you back, I'm defending this, step deep, turn, bring them straight down, and then again from here, I can work whatever strikes I need to, I can pop back up, and we can get the hell out of there. Now the last option that you have is essentially like a hip toss, where again, this might be more suited if he's not really pulling me back per se. Maybe he's just choking and I'm able to kind of bend and get my weight down a little bit. The key to do a good hip toss though, is that I have to not only like drop my weight, I need to get my hip loaded up into his hip. So I literally kind of have to drop and bump his hips back a little bit. So now as you'll see, his hip and everything is loaded up onto my back. So all I have to do is start standing up. And when I stand up, it's almost weightless at this point. Compared to when I get here, if I just try pulling, it's gonna be very difficult. But when I bend and shoot my hips back, now it's effortless. And then obviously the hip toss motion is I'm just gonna go here and just toss them over the top at that point. The problem with doing a hip toss is if you don't have the experience, if you don't have the grappling experience, you don't do it often, you might get into a situation where you start trying to do this and then you kind of just fall and they end up on top of you and now you're in a worse situation. So I don't always recommend hitting a hip toss. But if you get into the point where he's dragging you, pulling you back, and you kind of get here, and you feel like, oh, I'm actually loading them up, then yeah, pop up, whip them down, do your damage, and we can get the hell out of there. Last thing that you can obviously try to do if they put these chokes on you is trying to just do damage from here. Like, yes, I can kind of step off to the side a little bit. I can work some elbows, try and loosen up the grip. I can work stomps, I can work back kicks. All of those are great options. I can throw my head back a little bit. The problem is none of that's guaranteed. And if you miss, I miss, he may also not sit there and just continue choking. He might either rip the choke on you or he might switch it into something else and you just lose the ability to get out of those situations altogether. So your best option is, again, right away we start hand fighting, we get heavy, we look to step back right away, we do damage, or we're gonna step back, turn, literally just bow and get him out that way. Either way, those are a few options for you. Give them a shot, stay safe. We'll see you next time.